What is a chakra? Well, the word chakra literally translates as wheel or disc. There's even one of the deities is holding some bladed discs as weapons, and they're called chakras. And most commonly in modern times, you'll hear it translated or described as an energy center. And yeah, for me, that's a perfectly good translation. There's also one of my teachers, Anna Dear Judith, from who I learn a lot about chakra theory in this particular system that we are studying on this course. She calls them organizing centers, which can receive, organize, and emit certain kinds of energy. So that's how she describes a chakra. Notice the pronunciation of the word. The correct pronunciation is chakra. So it's CH, it's a ch sound, as in cheese. It's not an SH sound. So this is a modern mispronunciation that seems to be catching on throughout the yoga world, of people saying chakras. This is incorrect. That is not how it's pronounced. And so you wonderful yogis as going out there and teaching chakra yoga, you can pronounce it the correct way. So it's CH, cha, and then a tapped R. So chakra is the correct pronunciation. And it's worth mentioning, as before I dive into the theory of this particular system, that there are multiple systems out there. There's been different systems in different lineages and at different periods of time. And if you're interested in the different systems, then you can find out more about that in James Mallinson's book, Roots of Yoga. That's a good place to go. He's got a whole chapter dedicated to all the references to the chakras in all of the main texts, and you can see some of the differences there. Also, Christopher Wallace has an online workshop that you can purchase. I think it's called Chakras Illuminated, and it's for 90-minute lectures, I believe, where he looks at some of the different systems. And if you do buy that course, you might see me in, because it was live and he recorded the Zoom calls, so you might spot a much younger James French in there, looking very different. But what's interesting there is that the traditional approach to chakras didn't involve things like emotions. Connecting emotions to the chakras wasn't a thing that came out of the Indian style of and traditional style of practice. This is something that came much, much later. And in fact, the more traditional systems saw the chakras as focal points for meditation, in order to connect to certain deities. But they weren't used in the way that we're using them in the modern world, where we are healing ourselves through the chakras. That wasn't a thing. So, I think it's important for us to be aware of this if we're going to go out there and teach chakra yoga, that we know some of the history. And so this modern approach and this system that I'm going to be teaching you in this course, and it is the most common system out there today. It's the 7 chakra system, also known as the 6+1 system, because many people say the Sahasrara chakra, the uppermost one, isn't a chakra like all the others. So the 6+1 system, or the 7 chakra system, and that's the most common one today. It's probably the one that you've come across before. But really, until it was only in the last 200 years that particular system came to prominence. So it was a result of the New Age movement, the Theosophic Society, and in large part down to the work of Carl Jung, that made that particular system become a bit more famous. Because prior to those things, the 7 chakra system was not any more famous or well respected than the others. And the others is a 5 chakra system and a 9 and a 13 and a 21. And probably some others I'm missing too. And as I say, you can, if you're interested in those other systems, you can find out more about them in those 2 resources I mentioned earlier. And so this 7 chakra system, let's see, chakra system, it came to prominence after, in large part after Carl Jung got interested in it. And he was interested in it because he had already identified that we feel certain emotions in different parts of the body. So he had already identified that there's anger concentrated in the area of the belly. He'd identified love coming from the heart and communication from the throat, these kinds of things. And so then when he discovered the 7 chakra system, he was like, oh, that's interesting. There's the yogic tradition is saying that these centers have some importance, and this must be connected to what I've been working with emotions, and started layering the 2 together. And then since then, the whole idea, I think, has picked up a lot of steam. Now you have all of these things related to chakras. You've got all this chakra healing and people using crystals and music and all of these kinds of things that just weren't there prior to the last 200 years. So it's worth knowing that this system, the one that is famous, the one you'll almost always encounter if you go to just a normal yoga class in the West and also in India. I mean, every time I've done any work in India on the chakras, it was always within this system. And I went and studied with my main hatha teacher, who is Vishwaji of Anand Prakash Ashram. His style of yoga is called Akhanda Yoga. And I did his Kundalini training, and a lot of that knowledge is in this course. And that was the same 7 chakra system that we're talking about here. So in the modern world, this is the most common system, but it's really worth knowing that if you're going to teach this stuff, it's really important, I think, to know that a lot of the stuff we're teaching is only coming from the last couple of 100 years. Because often it gets presented as ancient Indian tradition, and it's simply not. The chakras are an ancient Indian concept, but they weren't used in this way of sort of using these centers as ways of healing our sort of earthly problems. That wasn't a concern. So that's the opening caveat. And having said that, now you know that, now we can dive into the system itself. So yoga. Yoga is about connection, it's about union, it's about integration, balance. And we can say that yoga is the science of connecting with the universe. So real yoga is when we understand that the ultimate sources of energy are not within us, but that we are in constant communication with the universe around us. So these ultimate sources of energy are outside of us, and that we are in a constant exchange because we are not separate from the universe. So we are part of it. We're part of Ma, the divine feminine of Mother Nature. And so the ultimate sources of energy are not within, but they're everywhere. So you have the air, our breath, water, the sun, the earth, multiple sources of energy, and we're in this constant exchange. So it's a little bit like we are sailboats, and as a sailboat we depend on the wind in order to be able to move, be propelled, but we don't own the wind. The wind does not belong to us. We are surrounded by all sorts of energy all of the time. Different kinds of energy, whether it's from the earth to the telluric energy, the cosmic energy from above, flying through whichever room you are right now. There's love, there's hate, there's desire, there's repulsion, there's creativity, there's fear, there's guilt, all of these things. And one of the questions, and one of life's great questions, is why do we respond to certain energies and not to others? And so this is a concept known as resonance. And this is a little experiment you can do. If you have two guitars and you can hold them close to each other, and if you pluck the E string on one guitar and hold it close to the other, the E string on the other guitar will start to vibrate. And this is because the two strings are in resonance. And so the same is true with us. We come into resonance with certain energies, and sometimes we'll be in the resonance of love, and sometimes we'll be in the resonance of fear. But for most of us, we're not able to say why we resonate with one particular kind of energy at one particular time, and why it's another the next minute. So in life, everything is resonance, but most of us are victims to resonance because we have no idea about it or very little control over it. And through our yoga practice, we're able to start to take back control. We're able to start making conscious choices over what we would like to resonate with, and start to tune out that which is not supportive, not helpful to us on our journey. So how do we produce resonance? Well, you can think about yourself as being a little bit like a two-way radio that can broadcast and that can receive. And on this two-way radio, if you think of like an old style radio which has like a tuning dial, you can imagine that the tuning dial is the mind, or more specifically the power of concentration of the mind, or the power to focus your mind on one particular thing. And that this two-way radio, which you are, has these different channels. And each channel has a different vibe. It's a different energy. There's different emotion. There's a different state of consciousness. And so these channels are like the different chakras that you can, using the power of your mind, you can tune into the different ones. And each chakra it's an energy center, as we said before. You could also see it as a portal or a window through which you can transfer energy from outside to inside and from inside to outside. So in this system, which we're using in this course, the 6+1 or the 7 chakra system, these chakras are to be found along the central line, right? So they're in the central line of the body, and there are 7, and we'll go through them one by one during the course of the course. But there are other chakras in the body. There are more than just 7. It's just that there's 7 main ones. Even in this system, we recognize that there are more than 7. In fact, we did say before that a chakra is a wheel, but another perspective on what is a chakra is anywhere that 2 nadis intersect. So a nadi is an energy channel, and we're said to have 72,000 nadis in our energy body. And we'll be looking at what I mean by energy body in one of the subsequent lectures when we start to look at the theory of the 5 bodies. But within our energy body, we have these nadis. Nadi is the word for energy channel. And anywhere that 2 or more nadis meet and cross, that would be called a chakra. And then the 7 main chakras, this is where there's a very high concentration of nadis crossing each other. And so you have these 7 main chakras along the central line.